in a YouTube environment, it wants to super serve the audience you have, regardless of the audience you want. If that's it, if all you want to do is continue to make the kinds of videos you've been making, then sure, YouTube analytics are great. But if you want to produce a feature or write a book or create an apparel line or practically grow, then yeah, the information you're getting from a dashboard is not enough. But if you have an ongoing content strategy that's in dialogue with your audience and you are a publisher or you are a content production company, in addition to the brand that you're building, then you don't need a campaign. Okay, so here's my hot take. Marketing departments shouldn't exist because I work for creators in the creator industry, bringing this research methodology in a less expensive way to the creator economy because they're so used to having analytics dashboards and that kind of data.
So what do you mean creator economy? As in like the YouTubers?
As in YouTubers, TikTokers, podcasters.
They use this type of work? This sounds so deep for them, right? No disrespect to them.
No, but at a certain scale of growth, when you start getting into, that's not like a one person. This isn't work that I do for like a singular person. These are people who are creators who've grown into having production companies, grown into building out their franchises.
Understood.
So like, think about it as micro media companies, where maybe there's like somewhere between 5 and 20 people working there. I also work for traditional entertainment companies, helping them bridge the gap the other way. So I work with digital creators, helping them use methodologies that traditional media has historically used. And then I help traditional media understand the tools that the creator economy has been brought up with, and how do you get onboarded into environments that are just so different from what film and television are used to.
Yes.
Film and television aren't quite acclimated to being in an environment that they don't own, where they're at the mercy of a suggestion algorithm. And so that is just a whole other process of acclimation in order to succeed in content development, production, distribution in a suggested algorithm environment. So I kind of cross that bridge between...
You democratize that sort of very difficult, very expensive piece of work for big media into the creator economy by just bringing the tools and the methodologies. And because of the ways, like you said, Netnography?
Netnography, yeah.
So it's like on the internet, just listening and then collecting data, because it can be done and automated as well. It can be, to a large degree, cheaper than the traditional methods.
The other reason
and crashing time as well, right?
And the other reason why it's cheaper is traditional media companies tend to want a very clean sample. They want a representative sample using a sample provider so that they get a sense of the general population. The creator economy doesn't need to do that. That's overkill because they already have relationships with their audience. It is already so deeply connected that they can just use their own audience as their data set, put out a call to action to say, hey, I have this survey. I really want to hear from you. I really want to know more about what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see from me in the future. And they can just put that out there. And then the opt-in sample is automatically a highly engaged audience that's highly relevant to the client, which makes fielding research a lot less expensive.
Of course, because the significance is so high. Because like I said, the intention, the sample size, and everything around that just makes the findings so relevant and significant. And it's sometimes good enough is good enough. It's not like you're doing a NASA research. It's like you can, in marketing terms, you can do an A/B test and do this.
It's enough to get directional research to make some better informed judgment calls that creators wouldn't otherwise have access to the information about. Which honestly, I think is underutilized personally and really helpful because I've seen clients who do use it have tours that they sell out because they understand geography to a better degree. And they understand what their fans want in a live offering to a better degree. I've seen it work with partnerships where these creator companies have a better understanding of who their audience wants to see them partner with and do brand deals with or do collaboration with. And that helps grow the business. I've seen it also with that degree of information help creators make more money because they know more about their audience and therefore the value is increased because the degree of knowledge and relevancy to advertising clients is higher.
Absolutely, because now all the algorithms have shifted away from subscription models and putting the content in front of people, your subscribers, into putting your content in front of the interest of your subscribers or the interest of people. So subscriptions don't make any
right.
meaning
A follower count has almost
has no
meaning
at all, right? Yeah, you can have 1 million followers and your content is not relevant, so the algorithm wouldn't actually put it in front of anyone.
Yeah.
So relevance is everything now.
Relevance is everything now.
So here's a question for you, Meredith. Why? Why is it underutilized?
People don't know what they don't know. And
Interesting.
In the creator economy, so much of this is they see the production and they mimic the production, but people tend to be accidentally getting companies because they accidentally get famous, or they aren't making content with building a business in mind. So there's a lot of like, oops, I'm a production company now. Right. That happens to people in their early 20s.
True. 100%.
And a lot of that is they just don't know what they don't know. And how would you know what traditional, I'm so deep in it that I take it for granted. But when I talk to, 23-year-olds, they're like, you can do that? Like, so it just doesn't occur to people to do that unless you come from an environment where that is the culture of research. So I guess that's like why and also it's expensive and time consuming, and creators are often,
and it's hard. I mean, I know research, obviously I'm an academic myself. So it's just, it's no easy feat. I mean, either you don't know or you know, and even if you know, there's like 100 degrees of competency that, most people are on the kind of lower end, and going from one degree to the other is just massive effort.
Yeah. And for creators, their business is making content. And so like to outsource their research or to even think they need it, like it's also in the social media landscape, especially in the YouTube environment, there's so much data as it is. Like the dashboards are so robust relative to what linear media is working with. Linear media has to do market research for everything.
Yes. Because there's no attribution, right?
Yeah. And like you get Nielsen data, sort of, which is...
What's the Nielsen data?
Nielsen is a ratings system that comes out of linear television to judge how many people watch anything on a given night, but it uses a representative sample of Nielsen households, and they're trying to do digital attribution. But
it's messy.
It's messy and it's not precise.
Right, of course. It's like digital to analog or analog to digital. Okay.
Versus like a YouTube dashboard is incredibly democratic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And in real time.
Yes.
And so
and the attribution is spot on. I mean, it's just one-to-one.
And so creators often think they have all the data they need.
Right. That's what I thought.
Right. But you're only getting data about what you've already produced, not about something completely new in the future that you could be doing, because YouTube is just honing and fine-tuning what you've already given it. It can teach you how to make a better YouTube video, but it can't tell you if your audience cares about hoodies or only shops at drugstores. Like, it can't tell you that. It can't tell you if your audience cares who you voted for in an election or not. It can't tell you that. You may be able to judge some of that by your comment section and some of that by interactions a creator has with fans, but those kinds of qualitative elements, it can't even really tell you demographics, because people lie all the time to get on social media, and kids use their parents' phones, and there's a lot of like sharing of devices. And so it's not even particularly good at demography, which from an advertiser perspective is critical to understand. So like there is a trap of you have a lot of data at your disposal if you're in like a YouTube environment. And so why would you need more? But
yes,
if you're growing into novelty, growing into new business lines or franchising out, then
you have to be serious about it.
You have to be serious about it. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't just rely on those free dashboards that those tools give you.
You can if your aspiration is purely making content. If that's it, if all you want to do is continue to make the kinds of videos you've been making, then sure, YouTube analytics are great. But if you want to produce a feature or write a book or create an apparel line or
practically grow,
then yeah, the information you're getting from a dashboard is not enough.
It's way not enough. Okay. So now I'm sold.
Okay, cool.
What do I do?
I mean,
so how is it done? Now let's say I'm a creator.
Yeah.
I have a decent following. Let's say a few thousands, not much, but very small, like a micro, right? What do I do? How would this help me?
You would want to know where you as a creator want to grow into.
Right. Okay. So let's say in my case, CEOs, founders, investors, and entrepreneurs.
So then I would say, okay, let's ask your listenership, what is their occupation? Is your audience the audience who is the audience? Are they the audience you're trying to reach and you want to be reaching, or is your audience someone else entirely? So I would be thinking about like
the current ones.
Current ones.
So you just inspect the as is.
Inspect as is.
Okay.
And in a YouTube environment, it wants to super serve the audience you have, regardless of the audience you want. So the way growth happens is super serving the audience you have, so that you have an audience that returns a high likelihood of times for a high percentage of assets. And then it's like, oh, we know what this audience looks like. We know what they like. We can build out a cohort of content. So assuming you have like a robust asset library, then YouTube will know what to suggest it against.
What do you mean asset, like the actual content?
Yes. So YouTube cares about the entire body of work. Any single asset could become an outlier, and you have guys like Mr. Beast who base a lot of their production on outlier theory. So like if you're doing an interview show and you have a name that is particularly famous on it, like a Simon Sinek or a Brené Brown, they already have a lot of searchability to them. So of course they're going to be an outlier. And of course there's already a lot of content about them online, so that YouTube knows what to suggest against. Say you watch Brené Brown's TED Talk and then she's on your show. Someone who watches her TED Talk will probably want to hear her continue to speak, and YouTube knows that and will suggest that. So there's the body of work and the production element. And then is your audience who you want, or who are they? Who are they actually? Because you never really know until you ask. And if you're looking for CEOs and entrepreneurs, then there are two ways to think about it: is ask CEOs and entrepreneurs where their pain points are, what they like about the content they consume, like what are they interested in, and cater to that, or super serve the audience you have if they are or not CEOs and entrepreneurs. Figure out who they are and what they're interested in, and why if they're not CEOs and entrepreneurs, why are they tuning into this? What is it they like about it? Is it messaging? Is it tone? Is there educational takeaways? And those are all things you can ask. You can sort of see it in an analytics dashboard, depending on your like retention graphs and like where things are spiking, and make some educated guesses. Or you could or you could put out a call to action to say, hey, I've got some questions. Why do you like this?
So here's the thing, and because probably you probably wouldn't know, I don't know, but this part of the world is kind of dramatically different from, let's say, the United States, right? People here are more passive than you would want them to be, especially online. There's a cultural nuances of saving face, fear of failure, not wanting to be under the spotlight for whatever reason. You'll find a lot of these CEOs, especially the CEOs, the entrepreneurs, they don't even have a LinkedIn profile. And if they do, funny enough, sometimes they don't have a photo associated with it. So, and they try to stay outside of the public eye that's not everybody, obviously, but this is the culture, right? Similarly, if you put let's say, for example, in my LinkedIn profile, every time I put a piece of work, a content, I get thousands and thousands of impressions, but I got less than 50 engagements, right? Now, when I didn't know this. I was approached by one, those VAs, the people who manage your accounts, which I don't like. So I said, you know what, let me just speak to them. So I spoke to this lady from India, and I showed her my kind of analytics in the background. Like, she gets around 300 to 400 engagements per post, and she posts every day, but she gets less than 500 impressions. So she gets 200 engagements for 500 impressions. I get probably less than 50 for thousands and thousands of impressions, sometimes more than 10,000 or 15,000 impressions, which tells me that the algorithm is serving it to more people because people actually are consuming it. See what I'm saying? They're consuming it, whether reading it, watching it, stopping at it. So the render of the content is more than 3 seconds, but they're not engaging in it, because once they engage, it's recorded against them, for them, whatever it is. They're known that they've engaged with it.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, funny, Because as an academic, that's a behavioral data
Yeah.
that is, I don't know why. Well, now, of course, me studying culture and, this is my field of research. I know that our cultural traits, it's more the patriarchal one. You have to kind of get approvals before you do anything. You're sort of, saving face, fear of failure, risk averse, so on, so on, so on, so on. So how do you, so with that context, right? Because this is a context that I've been living in for the past, God knows how many years. This is my field of research for the past 8 years. I know this like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do to change it. It's how it is, right?
Yeah. LinkedIn is a tricky one because LinkedIn requires you be yourself. So that is a tricky market fit because your target audience is there, but it's not like a Twitter or an Instagram or a YouTube where you could be an anonymous consumer that it's not attributed to your name. You could have a screen name or a burner account or something like that. So it's tricky when it is ascribed to that. There are ways to engage where the answers might not be publicly recorded. So you can polls. Then they can just make a selection and, or like doing things anonymously. If you can set up anonymous infrastructure, then there's expression without attribution. And is that less clean, interesting? Is that less interesting data?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there are ways to work around it.
Yeah.
And then there's also thinking about the broader environment and like for you, like do you have an interest in global curiosity about this region? And is the audience is the audience ideally people all over the world who want to gain cultural competency in this region? Because if that's the case, then you could just say the quiet part out loud.
Right. Okay. So I might have another angle to it. Okay. Just to kind of start. I mean, because kickstarting is the hardest part, right? And because because you don't have access to the data. Sometimes it gets frustrating because you say you have to ask.
Yeah.
And in this part of the world, asking is the worst thing because self-reporting is so skewed here as opposed to other parts of the world. I mean, people aren't. It's not that they're dishonest. I mean, let's be very clear. It's not that. It's just that people try to show a different face publicly to what's.
Yeah, people underreport things that are embarrassing, and they overreport things that they think reflect well on them.
So that's the human condition, right?
Yeah.
But then what is embarrassing is the bar that changes according to the culture and the nation, right? So here, what's embarrassing is probably a photo with, I don't know, someone who is below you or above you or whatever, or a photo with a woman, or whatever, right? That could be, so the bar is different. So your kind of broad definition is 100%. It's just that what we do if it's different.
Yeah. So social proof. One of the strategies I talk about a lot is highlight the behaviors in your audience that you want to see more of. If people are talking to you, clearly they want that connection. If you do get a comment, talk to them, reply back. Be like, thank you so much. Give that sort of recognition to say, this is the value. These are the values of this community. This is a conversational community. I am going to do my best to converse. And if you are brave enough to participate in this conversation, it will become a deep and meaningful conversation. I'll make sure of it and spotlight that. And all you need is a couple of brave people.
Yeah.
All you need is a couple of brave people. And I'm sure you can find a couple of brave people.
Yes. So let's say I have that. Now I have the data. Now, how does the data in your world? I mean, now you're getting this data. You know that, okay, this is my audience. This is where they want to go. And this is how I can use this data to grow, right? What's next?
That depends on your production pipeline. That depends on
So does it feed into the content? Okay.
It in some worlds it does, in some worlds it doesn't. In traditional Hollywood, this kind of fan insight often gets stuck in marketing departments and doesn't fully make a feedback loop into content development. When we're talking about the creator economy and it's an instantaneous feedback loop, then yes, this information immediately goes into use in terms of production. Yeah. Immediately. So it depends on the use case and it depends on what you're asking about. Because what you're asking about could be very far in the future, or it could be, hey, I'm thinking about expanding into talking about venture capital and private equity. Or, hey, I'm thinking about expanding into, or like what are your pain points as entrepreneurs and CEOs? Like, what are the things that you're curious about that an academic could solve? And think about it that way. So yes, like you would ideally structure your research in such a way that the outcomes of your research would be immediately actionable based on the goals of you as a creator and trying to align those goals with your audience. And yeah, so again, it depends on how you're structuring.
Okay.
It depends on how you're structuring what you're asking and why you're asking it.
So for a company, let's say a media company or a creator organization who is obviously there's the key person of influence and there's the 20 people that work behind him, that definitely wouldn't sit with marketing, right? You said that this data will sit with marketing, right?
That organization would be too small for this data to sit with marketing. I'm talking if you are the
we're talking about, let's say,
the BBC.
Yeah.
Let's say we're talking about the BBC.
Right.
Let's say we're talking about the BBC and the BBC is working on some adaptation of a public domain book by a long since dead British author. That information that survey data, that kind of audience data may inform what they choose to adapt. Or they'll choose to adapt something that a creative is particularly interested in adapting. And then the question will be, well, how do we reach this audience? Already knowing that this is the content that's going to be greenlit. And in Hollywood, it tends to be the creatives make a lot of those decisions. Yeah, there's a lot of market research that goes into informing some of those decisions in terms of like acquisition and adaptation and stuff like that. But sometimes it's just, is there a team that's big enough with enough clout to make that choice? And then after the fact, you have to figure out your audience. And the internet just works in the inverse way of like you super serve your audience and they tell you what to make. So it's two different feedback loops depending on the use case. So if it is a linear traditional Hollywood feedback loop, audience research is often just how do you reach an audience with what you've already made, not how do you make what an audience really wants.
Right. So who's your number one client? As an industry, is it creators?
I work with more creators than linear media companies, but my longest standing client is a internationally known children's linear media company.
Okay.
I have found myself in the kids and family space.
Not Nickelodeon, is it?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. But I found myself in the kids and family space in a weird way. And the kids and family space is definitely different than like creator economy for adults or teenagers or something like that. So it's a little bit all over the place, honestly, based on my personal network back home. And
right. So you work on referrals and people who kind of okay. And is it your company or
it is my company? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're an entrepreneur.
I am an entrepreneur,
brilliant.
and I work for myself. It is my consultancy, and
it's amazing.
It's an entirely word of mouth business. For me, yeah.
You'd be surprised. Why didn't you do research to grow yourself?
I do not aspire to become famous. I have friends who are.
Okay.
And in the town I live in, which is Los Angeles, California, United States. And I grew up in Los Angeles, California, the United States.
I think a couple of the audiences know this place.
Yes. I grew up with a strong understanding of the construct of having an audience. And I love that this exists deeply. I love parasocial relationships. I love broadcast. I love fandom. I love audience development. I love all of this. I know what it takes to be a creator and a creative. And I personally love the research more. I want to...
Speaking like a true academic.
Yeah, and I've done teaching, and I will definitely say I love the research more.
Yeah.
That's where my heart is.
It's That's a different psychology of like academics and researchers and Nobel laureates who never go online, and it's like crazy, right? I mean,
and like yes, I could, I very well could.
Of course you could,
I could. I know how to.
Yeah.
I
choose not to.
I choose not to.
Yeah, I think. See, the thing is, for the longest time, I never wanted to be online at all. Until COVID hit. So until COVID 2020, I never had a social media account anywhere, just a WhatsApp, and that's it, right? So probably I had a Facebook just because of my age, but then that was probably 10 years ago, and then nothing happened to it, and it was like a ghost town. But then COVID hit, and because I was an employee at the time, I was salaried, I was like, hold on, I could get fired, no one knows who I am, and then I have to claw my way back into living, sustenance, basically speaking, right? And that was the inflection point. And now every time I do it, I have to be honest, I don't enjoy it. Like I don't enjoy the spotlight.
Yeah.
But every time I release a piece of content, I have to do, especially that I'm the one who's editing it. So I look at my face while I'm editing it, and that's absolutely uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah, deeply uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable, but then I have to do it. There's no other way.
And I may very well this year eat my words. In part because of social pressure. I was just at the 1 billion followers summit. That's why I'm in Dubai. And I get asked a lot when I speak, where can I see your work? Where can I read your work? And my work is all private sector. Like, the reality is, people can't, because my clients paid for it to be theirs and confidential, which is a hard way to do client acquisition. Let's be real. So I may end up eating my words out of a little bit more of necessity, but even still, like, I don't aspire to broad reach. Like I'm on all of the platforms because I have to for work, because of the ethnographic research that I do. I am perfectly competent at all of them, and the only one I'm actively posting on is LinkedIn, because because that is where my small targeted professional audience is. Because I don't aspire to broadcast, nor do I need scale. And some people do need scale.
So exactly, it depends on where you are in your entrepreneurship journey and what you aspire to be. So your forecast of, let's say, by the end of this year, I want to hit, I don't know, like $10 million or $20 million in revenue. Like, client acquisition is really hard and tough. And if you're not on social media, it becomes very expensive, because now people search for you. It's not like before. Even if you have a word of mouth, now people go online and search. And if I claim to be something and people don't see it online in some way, shape, or form at a kind of respected period of time, speaking about it, posting about it, have, thought leadership pieces of content about it, especially in professional world. I mean, we're not talking about the fashionistas or the fitness or the kind of foodies, or
not the broadly applicable world. Yeah.
No. So just a very specific. So if you're serving this niche or that sector or this industry, if you're going to acquire, and you're using social media as a marketing tool for acquiring new clients for your projects, no matter how big or small the client is, people go and search. And that's what I learned the hard way, but also the strategically designed way. So I'll tell you this example. So this would be in the 20th episode of my podcast, right? It's fairly new, not even a year long. It's like 6 months.
Most podcasts fail because they don't make it to 10. So congratulations.
Thank you. So that's I'm adamant. Obviously, I've built a place for it. So this is one thing that I know that it's a marathon, and I can't sprint in a marathon. That's crazy. But the key here is, every time I speak with a new client, a lead that comes in and clicks on one of my ads, he says in the meeting, it's like I've known you for a long time. And initially I was puzzled, like, huh? And he's like, no, I just watched a couple of your podcasts, and as if you've been speaking in my ear. I was like, oh, okay, I meant it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it'll be that effective. And that's social media.
Yeah. There's a phrase I use a lot, which is time spent over time.
Okay, explain.
So, right now we're in an era of shorts in an intermittent rewards variable system of like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts.
Sure.
It's very hard to do audience development and gain fandom in those environments because you're not an individual user, no matter how much they like your work, is not spending a lot of time with you and not spending time with you reliably, longitudinally. And in order to develop a relationship, parasocial or otherwise, you need to spend time regularly and ideally frequently with the other half of that relationship. And that doesn't matter if that's your like wife or your girlfriend or your best friend or your clients or your audience. It comes down to time spent over time, which is why it's easier for...
I like that.
It's why people are fans of television shows.
Right.
Specifically.
Right.
But they're fans of movies broadly.
Wow. That's profound. Okay, hold on. Time spent over time.
Time spent over time.
And that's why exactly Friends and other shows, people kind of are like, they like that show and they speak about it and they see reruns and reruns and reruns, but then they like movies.
Or they are, if you're pretentious and academic, cinephiles. Yeah.
That's
time spent
crazy.
over time. And so you see this play out in the TikTok versus YouTuber and podcaster environment as well. Because...
yeah, you can get your 5 seconds of fame.
Right. You can build an audience in an intermittent rewards variable swipe short form environment. You can build a business that way because of reach, and advertisers do care about reach. But to build a fandom, that's incredibly challenging without a long form component where people, without a reliable long form component where people can really get to know you and feel like they are your friend. Because when we talk about fandom, we're talking about a relationship, and we're talking about, when I talk about fandom, I talk about the Kresnica Research and Insights model of fandom, which I was privileged to be a lead researcher on in 2016, where we did research about what is unique about the fan experience, depending on what you're a fan of, and what is the same no matter what you're a fan of. And the conclusions that this team under Susan Kresnica, she's an amazing researcher, shout out to Susan, came up with is fandom is about, the experience of being a fan is about 3 things. It's about self-care.
Okay.
Which is experiencing a full range of human emotions in a safe, contained way. So like, say you're a fan of Arsenal Football Club.
Right.
When they win, it feels like you've won, despite the fact that you've done nothing except for probably watch the match. When they lose, it feels like you lost, despite the fact that you did nothing other than probably watch the match. But it is this full range of human emotions in a safe and contained way, because you personally, again, didn't do anything other than watch the match. So you have this full range of human emotions in a safe and contained way. And you mentioned Friends. It also is a reliable source of comfort. So people revisit this thing to help them regulate their own emotions. That's one, self-care.
Okay.
Then you have community. Fandom also serves community needs of
sense of belonging,
whether
right.
that's an imagined community or a literal actual community.
Yes.
And
like Star Wars,
like,
for example.
Yeah. So, or Swifties, that's an identity moniker. That's a moniker of like participating in a community.
Yes.
And so it's a thing that you can bond with other people over.
Yes.
In the case of like sports, maybe that's your family because you go to matches of whatever your sport, your family grew up going to matches of, I don't know, maybe it's soccer or cricket or baseball. My family was baseball. And you inherit that, and that becomes a family bonding thing. Or maybe you move and you're a young professional and you're looking to make friends, and it's a way to meet new people. So you have this community aspect, and that community can be real people or people on the internet. That is something that is the internet enabled, is you can get communities of interest on the internet.
BTS Army, for
example. BTS Army,
yes.
Or in the early days of the internet, you had a place called The Bronze for Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans.
Really?
Which was like an old website, ancient internet tech. But
oh my God.
Yeah, so you have these spaces, or like subreddits, where you can actively participate in community online or offline or whatever. And then all of that is wrapped up in identity. Because ultimately fandom is something you have as part of who you are that you use
you subscribe to, right?
Yeah, as a shorthand for something about you.
Yes.
And so like
extension of your
being, and you can have a presumptive value system.
Yes.
So like, I'll use Taylor Swift again. If you're a Swiftie, presumably you're in it for female empowerment. You believe in uplifting other women. You believe
so it can be ideological, or it can be value driven, or it can be whatever.
Whatever it is, like whatever that is,
yes,
it is a proxy for identity.
So if self-care, community, and identity.
Yeah. So like if you were to travel anywhere in the world,
right,
and you saw someone repping the merch of the thing that you love that's a little bit obscure, you'd go up to that person and be like, yo, I love it too. Like, very cool.
True.
Bonding moment.
True. Wow, that's okay. So you've just defined fandom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's dwell a little bit deeper on fandom as a concept, because you mentioned also professional fandom.
Yeah.
So people making a living out of it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know from my daughter, she's watching these kind of streamers on games, and they just, professional streamers. And why is that?
Because they can.
Okay. So it's just because they can make money?
Because
provide sustenance?
Because you can do what you love, loving what you love. So like...
What about value add?
Well, the value add is an emotional...
Entertainment.
It's emotional. It's the connection. Right. It's the self-care. It's the identity. It's the community.
Yes.
And if you can make money doing what you love...
Why not?
I'm a millennial. That was the instruction our parents gave us, is like... Make money doing what you love. You can do anything. Which, lucky us, but also great way to ruin a hobby.
Make it a job.
Turn it into a job.
Exactly. Agreed. You have to grind. It's an uphill climb.
Right. But like, but it also affords access. So I use like Disney creators, like Disney theme park fans and like Disney creators as an example of professional fans, where you have these vloggers who like spent so much time going to Disney theme parks and talking about Disney movies and reviewing every food that is released in every theme park and going all over the world. And people are curious because they use it for planning trips. It is a big enough fandom that people who may not be able to afford can watch aspirationally and feel like they're participating in the novelty of this experience. And eventually it helps them get proximity to that object of fandom. Eventually these Disney tubers wind up on a PR list. And then they get trips to go on the cruises and do coverage of the new cruise ship and get comped experiences.
Of course,
and
get freebies, yeah.
And sometimes get paid with brand deals to continue to engage with the stuff they love. And wouldn't that be a dream come true for like your childhood self, to be like, one day someone is going to pay you to go to Disneyland. One day someone's going to pay you to go to Disneyland. And like, how delightful is that? The reality of the work is it's a hustle and it's a grind, because you're a small production company who...
You're literally bootstrapping everything.
Who has to both experience the joy and be removed and self-aware enough to capture your experience of the joy. And or the critique or whatever it is. But there is this layer because means of production got way less expensive, means of distribution got way less expensive. And we are living in a search engine world. And so you can be a fan of a thing that is searchable and people will search it and find you. And so it's just possible now. And there have always been like these cottage industries. So people who make crafts or like sell fan-made merch, and Etsy and like a lot of technology in the goods and services industry have enabled that to boom in terms of professional fandom as well, to be able to be like, oh, well, I make, in the Disney example, like I don't personally make it, but I know Etsy sellers who make these like Mickey Mouse ears. They sell them in the parks, but there are crafters who make these like special, specific, obscure ones that like wouldn't be financially viable to mass produce at a scale that like Disney would need to. And so there are these crafters that just make a living making stuff for fans because they're fans, and like they have sewing skills or Cricut or a laser cutter or whatever equipment they've invested in.
They penetrate into an existing, community,
right? With
their own skills, with their own craft,
with their own fandoms. They do artist alleys at conventions. I don't know if you've ever been to a comic book convention.
Yeah, but
there are artist alleys where there are independent artists who sell their art and sell their crafts based on sometimes their original IP, but oftentimes around the IP that they love. And so there is this whole cottage nerd culture that the major rights holders have stopped being quite as litigious about, because in the 2000s, there were a lot of cease and desist letters going out from a lot of major IP owners to these cottage industries.
Of course, I would imagine.
But I think there's a shift in ideology to say, well, this earned media is good as long as it's not cannibalizing something that...
But how do you know that?
Well, so you have piracy and then you have the merch thing, and the merch thing is a little bit more tenuous. Piracy is pretty clean cut.
Yeah.
But you have the ability now to white label people, to be like, okay, we care about all of this piracy, but these 10 YouTubers can sort of do whatever they want. They're on our white label PR list. Or whatever that ends up being, because there is technological...
Like with permission and
with permissions. There's the technological infrastructure to do that now, which again, like fandom in the 90s just couldn't do.
Of course. I mean, it wasn't scalable. It wasn't obviously democratized in the same way. It was very contained. But how sustainable is that from a sustenance perspective? Let's say 20 years, 10 years. I mean, is it a career that can withstand the test of time?
If your fandoms can, or if your production can adapt to other fandoms, like, yeah, probably, because if you're a professional fan, it's often something that has proven longitudinal anyway. One of the things that I care deeply about is the difference between like a long-standing fandom and a cultural moment.
Right. That's important.
Yeah. So like, how long can this sustain? And like, is this something that a parent could teach their child? How long has this content been around? How reliable is it? So like, you have these long running television shows that even though they're not on the air anymore, still have fans and still get revisited through streaming syndication.
Yes.
And that's not the same as like a 1-season show that got canceled before anybody could really watch it or love it, in a streaming environment where there are no hard copies for people to pass around and distribute and have a chance to grow its fandom organically. And like, it can be incredibly sustainable. Like it can be a life now. Being a professional fan could be your career until you want to retire. Like that is entirely possible if you play your cards right, or good at production, have a fandom that has a large enough audience to sustain your CPMs or your brand deals or whatever your revenue generating opportunities are. That maybe that's merch, maybe that's ticket sales also. Like creators have a zillion revenue streams because no particular revenue stream is stable in that business model.
Yeah, you have to diversify.
You have to diversify as much as you can, because none of them are stable, but you can aggregate a living with a few of them.
Have you read the paper, The 1,000 Fans?
1,000 True Fans.
1,000 True Fans, yeah. So it feeds into that, right? So
it does. There's also a great book called The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. She's part of the Dresden Dolls, and she was a street performer and a busker for a really long time. It's the book is an extension of her TED Talk. But yeah, it's all about sustainable community. And this is the other thing that like in the entrepreneur world, you're going to, for those of you who are listening and not watching, I probably just rolled my eyes. There's such a sexiness to growth that people are obsessed with. And maintenance of a community is so deeply monotonous to some people. But it's that maintenance mode that creates the sustainability. Things can't grow forever, no matter what a venture capitalist would like to have happen. And so if you can account for a community that can meet your financial needs and then maintain them for a long time and say, well, I could try and grow a little bit, but not at the expense of the existing community. Or you grow as much as you possibly like. The reach game and the fandom game can go hand in hand, but fly too close to the sun and you start alienating a core audience.
True.
And
that's dangerous.
Yeah, because you have an audience that's maintaining their relationship with you, is maintaining the brand.
Yes.
And so like, it's hard to say like growth isn't necessarily the number one aspiration, but like once you hit a certain size, growth doesn't have to be the number one aspiration.
Exactly. It's contextual, right? It depends on your existing. I mean, someone like me, for example, I'm still starting. I'm almost 2 years into my venture full time. I have to think about growth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But let's say I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I'm not just sustaining, I have a team. There's a healthy pipeline. Growth is good. It's a strategic objective, but like you said, it's not the priority. There's something else now, which is the maintenance of the existing community, the existing revenue streams, the diversification of the revenue streams. So if 80% is coming from one place now, instead of growing, trying to make the 100% coming from, let's say, 10 sources and so on and so forth. And then if I'm able to grow, that could happen later.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's difficult in an entertainment environment because this is where creator culture is eating the lunch of entertainment, of traditional entertainment, film and television. Fans want something reliable, and fandom doesn't die or sleep. Television has seasons. There's an off season. Sports has seasons. There's an off season. Marketing budgets tend to follow what gets televised or theatrically released or whatever when it gets released. And so what happens in the off season for television and sports? In sports, fans tend to go to another sport because there's always a sport happening. It just might not be your number one choice sport. But in television, the fandom sustains itself outside of a marketing budget. And in creator culture, there aren't really seasons. It's like telenovelas or soap operas. There's something new every week, no breaks, forever, or whatever the publishing schedule is, which really helps with fandom development because you can feed your audience.
You need continuity.
Yeah, you can feed the audience without them dropping off or forgetting about you.
And now that's easy, super easy, because like the abundance of content out there is just crazy.
Yeah, so if fans are looking for something reliable, like it's harder and harder and harder to find in television. Because seasons are getting shorter and marketing budgets don't plan for year-round sustaining of an audience.
It's a resources issue, practically speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, in the same way that but YouTubers don't have that problem.
Why? Is it because of the kind of agility of the teams that they're so small they can quickly pivot and
the environments are different because the measurements of success for film and television is how many people tuned in. And usually that's like a first 24, first 7 days, maybe your first month, maybe. But like shareholders, if you're on a shareholder call for like a Google or a Meta or an Apple or something, they're talking about daily active users, weekly active users, monthly active users. And so when you're on a distribution platform that prioritizes DAU, then of course you're going to favor content that brings that in. And so it's just aligned with the platform values. Like there's a reason why it is a content treadmill.
Yeah, it's the incentive that drives the behavior.
Right, because the platforms incentivize those that are good at providing the metrics.
Capturing the eyeballs.
That look good to advertisers and look good to shareholders.
Yeah, it's practically the number of eyeballs.
Right.
The quality of those eyeballs. And just those two metrics, if you're able to kind of substantiate them, then...
Yeah. If your daily, weekly, monthly active users are consistent or growing, that's what people like to hear. But like the measurement for film and television is just different.
So if we bring it now to entrepreneurs, Meredith, because entrepreneurs now, it has to be about online presence. It has to be about the digital world. It's no more above the line, below the line. It's no more billboards. It's no more TV. It's no more those traditional. I mean, people now, I think we crossed from the traditional to the digital years ago. And now it's probably 6 or 7 hours a day of screen time every day on average. So the abundance of, I mean, relatively speaking, let's think of it this way. relatively speaking to the TV time, people used to spend like half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hour max,
maybe
in
2
front of
hours.
TVs,
Yeah.
right? So advertisers used to cram into this 2 hours and that's it, right? Now it's 7 hours. And if you're multinational, then probably this is 24 hours because you have multiple 7 hours across the following the sun or the night. And then, so you have abundance of, and that's why advertising online is cheap. So the problem now is not about money like before. Like when you get a Super Bowl placement, that's probably, I don't know, like 10 million, 20 million, like crazy number, right?
Yeah, millions.
Like millions, right? You don't get, like, you can get far more effectiveness and reach from like literally fraction of that amount, right? Online and digital. So the problem is not cash. The problem is not production. The problem is not positioning. The problem now is actually attention.
Yes, we are in an attention economy.
Yeah.
That is the whole
and
problem.
That is, if I speak to any of my entrepreneur friends, including myself, it is a moving target. It's not like before, like, everybody's watching the Super Bowl. Everybody's watching this show.
Right. World
at
Cup,
8 p.m.
whatever. Yeah.
World Cup, whatever it is. So there's no problem. Like even if you have the worst ad in the world that captures no attention, there's no hook, there's no retention, there's no reward, there's nothing. There's no storytelling. People know about your brand in doves, right? So the concept is completely different and it's much, much harder. What gives?
Word of mouth. I mean, word of mouth has always been the strongest. And the hard part is social media is word of mouth. That's what it is. And like a trend about a brand, when a product goes viral, that's word of mouth.
But how does research feed into that?
I mean, it's a little bit knowing what's happening in culture, knowing what audiences are relevant to you and what's happening in those cultural spaces. If you're thinking about buying ads, and I almost never talk about buying ads, but if you're thinking about buying ads, then it's about niche communities at scale because there is no broadcast. So like it comes back to the relevancy and understanding what is relevant. If I'm like a sports drink, then where I'm going to want to serve ads in a digital landscape is going to be cobbling together micro communities in order to achieve scale. And it's going to be understanding which micro communities are actually relevant to the objective of the campaign to achieve that scale. Is this like a new product for people who already buy your product? Is this to try and reach people who may never have bought a sports drink in their life? And you're trying to find a new avenue to grow into a different market. Like, what's the objective of the campaign? And then what are the micro communities and the influencers in those communities who will help spread that message? Because like, honestly, ads are terrible and we have better options now. There are just better options now.
Like what?
Influencer marketing.
Right.
Or becoming a content production studio.
We went back to being crazy expensive. I mean, those influencers are costing an arm and a leg, and they're just sometimes as ineffective. It's, I mean, I hear you.
Okay, or buy ads, but know where you're buying ads, because where you're buying ads on a marketplace, like you could buy Google ads, or you can buy ads on Reddit. I don't know if people know that. You can buy ads on Reddit. They sell ads. You can buy ads against subreddits. That's a thing. And that's like a really hyper relevant thing.
Sure.
Or you can like do weird stunty stuff, which is the environment we're in right now. We're in the weird stunty stuff.
Yes.
Campaigns.
Viral moments.
Viral moment marketing in order to get a spike, like a massive global spike of awareness.
And then you get 10% of that retained or 1% of that retained. And that's...
So you do...
Oh, that's interesting.
You do a stunty thing at the speed of culture.
Yes. Red Bull is just crazy on that.
Red Bull is crazy at that. Like Red Bull had at the conference, they had some slackliner going in between the Emirates Towers and like stunty stuff. But that requires a lot of creativity or working with a creative agency. The other thing I would just say is like, I don't know, if you're an entrepreneur, you're making something. What are you making? That's question number one. If you're an entrepreneur, you're running a business that is a privately owned business that is presumably a small business.
Yes.
So what are you making? And who is it for? And is it good?
Yes, that's important.
Because if it's not good, it doesn't matter. You can spend a lot of money and people might talk about it and tell you that it's terrible. So like question number one is, what are you making and is it good? And then number two is, who's buying it and are they talking about it if it's good? And if they're talking about it being good, then the question is, how do you sustain their engagement with that long enough for them to tell someone else?
Yeah, to build a fandom.
That it's good. Yeah. So like they're like, it comes down to, is your product good? Which people don't think about because we're in this hustle and grind. Entrepreneurs are also like influencers in their own right because TED Talks suddenly became a viral thing. And now like it's a hallmark of success in a thought leadership space and like we come out of academia and like education, and education is the point, which is deeply unsexy, but like I'm an eat your vegetables person. I'm like, you want to talk to me? I'm gonna try and make the vegetables fun. But it comes down to, is your product good? Is your service good? Is it helpful? And then do you have enough runway? And then do you have enough runway to let other people tell other people that it's good?
Because it takes time.
Because it takes time spent over time.
If you know, time's over time. I love that.
Because it's time spent over time.
I'll tell you what, Meredith, if there's one key takeaway for me is time over time. It's crazy. I promise you, this concept just reinvigorated me into my own business, because my business, I mean, I'm in the consulting research, sort of like the academic space of organizational development and fixing firefighting for CEOs and so on and so forth. And it's very important to understand the value of time, right? Because sometimes you cannot cheat time, no matter how much you throw money at it.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you have free infinite money, that's different, like Barbie, you know, the movie, where they just had $200 million of like the exact amount of production value in the marketing. That's fine. That's a case study on its own.
Sure. If you can be Barbie or Wicked, be Barbie and Wicked. Do that.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly. So that's that. But we're not. So we're here.
Right.
So the only thing that we have to spend is time. But time requires enough oxygen in the tank, because otherwise you're going to gas out.
Yeah.
And guess what will happen? You don't have enough runway and you will crash.
Yes.
So all the analogies in the world,
right?
Whether flying, swimming, diving, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's just about having enough resources to sustain you until you reach to that time over time. Yeah.
And so one of my favorite examples of this is a truly terrible film that is very good at time spent over time. I recently learned that this is mostly an American thing. There's a film that came out in 1975 called The Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Okay, never heard of it. Okay.
It features Tim Curry and Susan Sarandon. It is a campy, cult, very bad movie. Like from a cinematic perspective, it is not good.
Okay.
It bombed in the box office when it came out in 1975. Nobody liked it, couldn't reach an international market, like did not succeed. But it hit an audience of the It's So Bad It's Good audience.
Right.
And it has been one of the longest running theatrical films of all time because it hit a very niche audience. And that audience now created an entire culture of like this campy midnight movie. Like you get dressed up like the characters, you like talk the dialogue out loud as the movie's running, like experiential thing around this undeniably bad film that became a catalyst for a specific kind of community, such that there are theaters all over the United States that show it once a year around Halloween or once a month, or in some cities once a week. And people have created rituals around this about a movie from 1975. Was
there anything that they've done so people like entrepreneurs can copy, or is it just pure sheer luck?
Sheer an audience found it and did what they wanted with it. Like this is independent of this is just time. It had enough time.
Right.
It had enough time to find its audience, and then its audience carried it not to gigantic commercial success, but it has carried it for 50 years.
Yep. That's crazy. So that's, I mean, so we have time, which requires resources, so you don't gas out or you don't crash if you don't have enough runway. If we need to end on advice coming from you, because every single entrepreneur, and if we're talking to entrepreneurs, investors, even corporate leaders and CEOs, the one thing that every one of those groups don't have or don't want to have is time. They want revenue now. They want profit next quarter. They want the product out this, this year or whatever, right? They want returns in 5 weeks for a campaign, for a organic social media campaign. They want returns in 5 weeks. Yeah. So what's your advice to them to maximize? I mean, nothing, I mean, there's obviously a limit. You can't say that, okay, we need to wait 50 years. Right. But also not tomorrow. I mean, you can't grow an apple, in a day. So what's your advice? And to utilize research, to utilize those sort of kind of things that they don't know. I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
I mean, I think it's one, you don't know what you don't know. So find your information gaps and answer those questions.
How?
I mean, in entrepreneurship, it's product market fit, right? Like that's the expression, product market fit. And
it's crucial.
It's crucial. And how do you know what you know about your market? Ask that question. How do you know what you know? Is it a gut feeling? Where'd that come from? Is it your own personal data without any context to a competitive landscape? Again, continue to look around. So one, fill the information gaps. You don't know what you don't know. Look around, get curious. And then it's really think about need states. Think about user need states. Because if the need state isn't common enough,
you don't have enough market.
Get a better need state.
Right.
Think about how and when and why they're going to use this, and worry about making the product good. Because if people use it and it's good, track your social listening. Like, see what people are actually saying about you. If you don't know, figure it out. If you don't know, hire someone to figure it out. And don't just rely on like quantifiable quantity metrics. Don't just be like, oh, well, this brand was mentioned X many times on X and Facebook this day. That's data in a vacuum without any meaning. Find out what they're saying. Listen, read your comments. Like, take them with a grain of salt, but also there's valuable insight in what people have to say about what it is that you're doing.
But to do that, you have to already be on those platforms, and you have to already be building those fandoms, and you have to already be...
You don't have to have a content business for people to talk about you in terms of content.
Right.
You don't. People will talk about you if you're worth talking about.
Gotcha. Okay.
People will talk about... So like, you don't have to get on a content treadmill to participate in this landscape and understand what your audience is saying about you. Because if you're doing something cool, someone's talking about you on Reddit.
Right.
Do you know what they're saying when you're not looking?
No, if you're building your own content, I mean, I take an example from I don't know if you know, the Nothing phone. Have you heard of it?
Is it? No, tell me about it.
So it's like, there's the Samsung, there's the Apple, and then there's the Nothing phone. It's called the Nothing phone, right? So it's a phone that's manufactured. It has unique features. It's like, looks crazy, but their marketing and their social media presence is exactly as if they are content creators. So they release content. They have fandom around them. People actually look for their products because of their... It's like, they're not an Apple or a Samsung that is faceless. No. The CEO himself is creating content about the product. They're actually organically engaging with their own communities. They're building their communities, and their communities are engaging with them. And their product is good, I think. I haven't used it, but that's what I heard. And because of that, they have sort of sustained marketing activities based on this building of, to your point, fandoms and people that are following them through a community building activities, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're having a conversation with the people who like what you have.
Instead of going and searching for them, and probably someone, obviously you'll have the infinite number of blind spots on the internet, and people will speak on their micro, whatever,
but not all executives have the skills to be famous on the internet. They just don't. And so if you think you need someone who's going to be good at being on the internet and a good conversationalist in those environments, then get a good conversationalist in those environments in your team. Don't use an outside agency. Hire somebody.
I love that.
Hire somebody.
That's exactly what I tell everybody. I agree. Why is that? Because that's, I mean, let me just kind of contextualize the kind of comment here. Because here, everybody hires an agency for marketing. And it's like 9 out of 10 people have bad taste. It's just 3 or 6 months worth of chaos and, people just figuring their way in the dark. But
because when you have someone on salary, you can bypass campaigns, which means you're maximizing for time spent over time because someone can do it every day because it's their job, because they're on salary. You're not like, oh, well, the money ran out and the agency contract ran out after 6 months and these are the assets we have. No, it's like, you're paying someone to have a conversation about your brand or product. Okay, so here's my hot take. Marketing departments shouldn't exist. My hot take is marketing departments should not exist because
let's kill marketing departments, people.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's kill all the lawyers, right?
Well, I mean, have a good lawyer. I think that's still important. But the reason why I say this is because all content is marketing and all marketing is content. It's all the same. So just if you're going to put content out in the world, be a production company too. Just be a production company too. Because marketing implies campaign, marketing implies paid spend, and neither of those things are necessary or helpful in a social media environment. We were going back to daily, weekly, monthly active users, which is entirely antithetical to campaign. That is content strategy. And marketing departments and marketing agencies are often like, well, what's a campaign for this new product? But if you have an ongoing content strategy that's in dialogue with your audience and you are a publisher or you are a content production company, in addition to the brand that you're building, then you don't need a campaign.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let me unpack this. So you said there's org structure creates marketing entities, and marketing entities sort of compartmentalize the way you talk to your audience. And because of those compartments, you're having these disconnections because it's just campaign and then stuff. Because the campaign is reliant on ad spend, on agency fees, on creating creatives that has certain whatever for that campaign, and then there's an expiry date, and then it's gone. So the continuity is not maintained through campaigns, which is created by marketing departments, which is through org structures.
Yes.
Tell me more.
So my lens is through fandom, especially the intersection of fandom and the internet never sleeps. And when I'm consulting on YouTube strategy, I'm talking about format development. I'm talking about treating branded content as entertainment and programming and developing it as entertainment, like a talk show or a game show or a reality show or a chat show, whatever it is, or a podcast, so that you can slot in whatever it is that is in your product pipeline into content that already has an audience. And so Matt Pat and Stephanie at Theorist Media, they are YouTubers who recently sold their company to a firm called Lunar X, and they're geniuses in the field, but they talk about the hooks of a YouTube video. And you have host, format, topic. And when we're thinking about content development, we're thinking about, okay, well, why is someone watching a piece of content? What do they like about it? How is this fandom developing? And so you have host, format, which is your story structure of your assets, and topic, which is like, what is searchability about it? And if you're building anthology shows or something that is kind of modular, where your host can change, your format is consistent, so that value proposition is consistent, and your search term can change, then if you are a software company and you're releasing updates or expanding your software portfolio, in theory, whatever format you're building is built to accommodate whatever novelty you're producing. If you're in media, if you're a cosmetic company and you're like, oh, well, we just launched a new shade range or something, then in theory, the content that you're producing should be able to accommodate that messaging.
It's like building a platform, right?
It's building a production company for an internet environment. It's becoming a creator, but on a brand side and understanding what kind of content is compelling all the time. And so you wind up with, and so some companies do this with their employees doing employee generated content. I just listened to a talk from a woman who was talking about employee generated content. So like if you see AARP, which is the American Association of Retired Persons or something, it's an organization for retirees with like benefits and discounts that brands participate in and stuff like that.
Right.
But like their employees are doing all sorts of like generation-based challenges of like, okay, they're answering quizzes and it's like adjacent marketing, but they could fit in whatever it is they need to fit in into this content strategy. Or like Duolingo is kind of a trend chasey one, but they have a content strategy. And so like all of their content is marketing and all of their marketing is content. And a phrase that like one of my clients uses is, if it's entertaining, then it's entertainment.
True.
And so like, yeah, I think campaigns are really rough because again, fandom is forever. Fandom is in perpetuity. I mean, it's not always forever, but like it's in perpetuity and it's a long-term commitment and relationship.
Sleep, like you said, yeah.
And it doesn't sleep. And so like, I think that the role of the campaign is kind of a dinosaur. And I think that org structures are structured, to get back to organizational structure, I think that a lot of businesses structure around this very antiquated version of messaging.
Yes. And that's why agencies even is, like you said, it's just a negative force into the brand of the organization, because you cannot build a fan around your product or service or anything that you aspire to build a brand around through campaigns. Unless the campaign is a catalyst.
Right. Like, I think there's a place for hiring outside creatives. I absolutely do. But I don't think it's in doing something that would be content strategy that requires maintenance.
Yeah.
If it's content strategy that requires maintenance, i.e. posting under your own brand name on a social platform, no, get a production company. But if you're like, I want to do something stunty, like the Westworld activation at South by Southwest a couple years ago, or anything that Red Bull does, or something that has like a high propensity to get PR around it, then yeah, hire a firm that's core competency is much more around publicity and less around advertising.
Yes.
Because I think between content strategy and publicity, there's your conversation.
Exactly. And that could be part of a bigger strategy that, kind of around a longer, let's say, strategy where there's certain kind of touch points or nexus or sort of, how do you say it, like peaks of your messaging. Yeah. That, okay, I know that there's an event that will take place in a month from now, and I'm participating in that event, and I'm putting my products and everything around that. So let me build up to that. Yeah. But then the actual event and the marketing and the PR and everything around that event and the stunts that I will do around it is done by someone else. But they're doing what I am telling them to do, which is part of a bigger strategy that I own and I've been executing and cultivating for the longest period. Yeah. So like, I think that there's a lot of room for real world stuff. Like if you're in a digital environment, then you're subject to the rules of your suggestion algorithms, or you have to pay. Yes. So just get good at being subject to the rules of the algorithm instead of having to pay. But or both. Or hybrid, yeah. Yeah, but I think about things like the Bridgerton experience, which was an internationally touring party that Netflix did for their show Bridgerton. It was a theme party. It was is the period Edwardian. It was a ball. It was a costume ball. Okay. With like actors and performers, and they built out venues in hotels all over the world, and people bought tickets.
and like vlogged from it, and it was a content generation opportunity, and it was a fan activation, and it was allowing fans to escape into the world of this show, and it was stunty, and it was temporary, and people paid to participate in it. And these are the kinds of things that I think about when I'm like, well, what is contemporary marketing? Contemporary marketing is doing something so good that other people want to cover it.
Yeah.
Which isn't an ad most of the time.
No, people don't share ads unless it's obviously the 1 in a million, but obviously people.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe they share tweets. Maybe they share memes.
Yes.
And like, if you can be a brand in the meme verse and that fits your product and your audience, like, I could see how memes sort of mirror campaigns because they rise and they fall. And like, as a language, memes move pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of campaigny, but
well, again, it's strategically campaigny. It's not a campaign to launch a product, or it's not just brand awareness campaign. You don't do. I mean, you just gave me an idea now, because you don't do brand awareness campaign. You have to have this consistent posting and content strategy as your brand awareness perpetual campaign.
As your perpetual
right?
campaign.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be perpetual, then it needs to be in-house. And if it's going to be in-house, then you have to resource it 365.
But why marketing is against that?
I guess it's not a marketing department. I think it's the campaign structure.
I think
it's campaign structure.
What you mean is traditional marketers will always think in campaign language.
They think in campaign language.
So unless they change and they become progressively understanding of how fandom and how community building works,
yes,
they have to be obviously let go of.
Find a better team.
Yeah.
I've seen great stunts. Like Elf Cosmetics has a presence in Roblox.
Oh, wow.
IKEA has a presence in Roblox, where they built a virtual store and got a lot of press coverage because they hired real employees to work in their virtual store. You can be an IKEA employee in Roblox. And that's cool. And that's weird. And people talk about it.
Yes,
and is it a campaign? Yeah. Is it a traditional advertising campaign? Like Mad Men style? No.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. Like, we were talking about ad units and what's happening to ad units and CPMs and the downfall of broadcast. Like, people have ad blockers.
Yep.
Like, places where you would put ads, audiences are actively trying to avoid. So why would you be shouting at an audience that doesn't want to hear it?
True. So true. Yeah. And it's not about the ads. It's not about the campaigns. It's about how you're able to build this meaningful connection with your audience. And that takes time, that takes effort, and that takes internal strategic focus that has to be done in-house. And the other thing is, I was talking to a marketer the other day, and she was like, oh, I have to produce one blog post every week and this and that. I was like, why are you creating the blog post? You're a marketer. This is not your product. What about your product, head of product? Yeah. What about your engineers? It's their product. Can't they write? It's like, oh no, they have no time. It's like, if they have no time, then why are they working? I mean, this is if you're producing the best product in the world, but you're not able to explain it or talk about it, then there's something majorly fundamentally wrong in what you do. Yeah. So to your point, it's marketing still, but it's diluted and it's sort of integrated across the different functions. So probably marketer is an aggregator, but everybody else is, I mean, like you said, employees should post and do some content from their own accounts and through their own ways and means. Engineers have to, or product designers have to write thought leadership and blog posts weekly. I mean, if it's 200 words, that's nothing. That's probably, 2 emails. And, the CEO must be having his face or her face all the time as a key person of influence, so people can have an affinity with the brand, not just as a logo, but also as human beings.
As the story of the brand and product.
Exactly. I mean, you look at Ronaldo, the
football player, Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo, he's far more as followers bigger than probably all the clubs combined that he played in, right? Yeah. Because people connect with people. Now, people connect with brands, but not as much as they connect with people. And if you have all of this as your ingredients for your success as an entrepreneur or as an enterprise, then yeah, you're right. We don't need marketing as a specific, distinct group of people in an org structure that kind of gives them this walls of
campaign infrastructure. Campaign infrastructure could disappear tomorrow and the world would be largely better for it. Hot take.
And you can strategically link it to your own kind of objectives, your own activities, your own projects.
Yeah. And if they're in-house, that's their full-time job.
Yes.
Not a campaign.
Exactly. Meredith, how long are you staying here in Dubai? You said you're leaving tomorrow?
I leave tomorrow at 2:00 in the morning. That's when I get a car to the airport. So far I've loved being here. It's an architectural marvel. I have never seen buildings like this before. And the weather is surprising. Everyone was like, you're coming here for perfect weather. And I'm like, I live in Southern California. And then lo and behold, Los Angeles is on fire and I'm coming into perfect weather. It's been delightful so far.
It is. Yeah. So I wish you all the best. And you're always welcome here in Dubai.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Dubai is a melting pot. It just, you don't feel, you always feel home in Dubai because you always find someone who knows someone or find something that you are a fan of.
Yeah.
Communities from all over the world. So thank you very much for being here, Meredith.
Thank you so much for having me.